Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 2021 virtual conference. I'm excited to be your host for this event for the first time since taking the helm as your OSETT president. Before we begin, I would like to recognize the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we are meeting on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands, which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. While 2021 has been another challenging year, I am sure we are happy that life is slowly returning to normal. Even if normal for most of us has changed. Before 2020, who would have imagined that we would be working from home on a permanent or semi-permanent basis, entering public spaces while wearing a mask, or ensuring that we practice physical distancing? With the increased number of Ontarians getting vaccinated, let's hope that our current normal will soon be a thing of the past. This is the second conference OSETT is conducting virtually. While meeting in person is missed by many of us, myself included, there are benefits to hosting events like this conference virtually. One immediate perk that stands out is the ease to which we can attend sessions from anywhere at any time. All you need is a device and a solid internet connection. Secondly, it allows participants from members, regardless where they live, removing the geographical barriers that once stopped us from meeting. Platform technologies have allowed us to rethink how we interact with each other. While nothing can replace in-person events, as we are social beings, thank goodness for technology. Can you imagine if this pandemic hit 30 years ago? But here we are, and things are indeed getting better. As many of you are aware, the theme of this conference is building resilience, an essential skill for the future. I do not think I need to explain to our adept audience why we chose this theme. To put it plainly, it seems like a natural fit for the times we are in. OSETT, like its members, has persevered over the past year and a half because we have found ways to be resilient. With the pace of change in today's world, all we can do is continue to employ the skills we have learned to grow and thrive. On that note, we have an exciting lineup of panel sessions, keynote speakers, and continuing professional development webinars. They are all related to our themes, but no two sessions are alike. From today's interactive panel discussion on emerging markets to our keynote speakers, Hazza Khan and Chris Kosh, both of whom speak to resiliency personally and professionally, to our members forum on the chapters, which we will allow members to interact via breakout rooms. We will be exploring resilience from a number of different angles. In addition, we are offering 4 professional development webinars, all of which are CPD approved. No matter what you know or who you are, there is an opportunity for you to expand your skill sets in all aspects of life. I want to assure members who cannot attend professional development sessions in real time that we will record and save all sessions to the platform for viewing after the conference has completed. I want to thank our many members and volunteers for their endless support in enduring OSETT and profession remains strong, relevant, and innovative. Furthermore, I sincerely appreciate your engagement with your professional association, particularly during these extraordinary times. Your voice matters, and as your president, I am listening to what you say. We need your continued support as we move forward towards making OSETT more, dare I say, resilient for a strong future. Before I hand the floor off to OSETT's Chief Executive Officer, Cheryl Farrow, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize our distinguished 2021 fellow recipients. This is OSETT's most prestigious designation, and this year we have 4 worthy members receiving this recognition. The designation recognizes the outstanding leadership, professional accomplishment, and distinguished service of certified engineering technicians and technologists. They exemplify the core values of OSETT, including integrity and ethics, professional commitment, and readiness to advance the profession. Congratulations to Whitney Jardin, C.E.T, fellow OSETT, Albert Pashkiowak, CET Fellow Oset, Anita Spare, CET Fellow Oset, and David Sang, CET Fellow Oset. I encourage everyone to go to the OSETT website and check out the bios for each fellow member or read about them in the January and February edition of the Ontario Technologist magazine. Congratulations to the 2021 fellow OSETT recipients. Should you know a worthy candidate, please nominate them for the fellow OSETT designation. The details can be found on the OSETT website. Now it is my pleasure to hand the floor over to OSETT's CEO, Cheryl Farrow.
Thank you so much, Rosanna, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you all today for my second virtual conference. As Rosanna already mentioned, the pandemic has brought about a new normal to how we conduct ourselves personally and professionally. Since coming on as CEO over a year ago, I have worked hard to ensure that OSETT continues to provide members with the support you deserve to be successful, even if that support was only available virtually for a period of time. I can't believe a year has already gone by, and I am more excited than ever about the potential that we have. Additionally, I'm working hard to ensure we continue to build our member services. As CEO, I'm committed to getting involved in some of these initiatives personally. I want members to see continued value in your membership. For example, one of the silver linings that came out of the pandemic was an increased focus on offering dedicated professional development sessions for members, just like we are doing with this conference. This will remain a permanent member service that we will continue to enhance both online and in person over time. I'm also working closely with staff, our council, and stakeholders towards building awareness and recognition of your association, the profession, and our certifications. At the end of the day, I want all stakeholders, whether colleges, corporations, government, or the public, to know and understand how essential engineering technicians and technologists are in preserving the safety, economic stability, and innovation that this province requires to prosper. We are always delighted when we have special guests participate in our events and conferences. I am thrilled to now invite our Premier, the Honorable Doug Ford, to bring greetings.
Hi, I'd like to bring greetings to everyone attending today's conference. The COVID-19 pandemic has been an unprecedented challenge. While we still have some ways to go, the light at the end of the tunnel is growing brighter every day, thanks to Team Ontario's incredible efforts. Ontario's world-class engineering technologists and technicians will play an important role in building Ontario and contributing to our province's success as we look towards a stronger and brighter future. Your skills and expertise will help build the infrastructure needed to fuel economic growth and drive our province's recovery. You're all absolute champions, and thank you for everything you do for our province and its people.
Thank you very much, Premier Ford. We are truly honored to have you bring greetings to our virtual conference. Your acknowledgement of the profession and the contribution of our members to this great province is a very important step towards more widespread recognition. As seen today and at OSETT's Awards Gala on November 4th, recognition for the association with key government officials is an important focus for us, particularly with an election pending next spring. Government recognition of our profession and certifications is critical, and I hope you are taking note of the increased presence thus far. We continue to work hard to advocate for you, our members, but our best advocate is you. You are our best marketing tool. When you succeed in your profession, abide by your ethics, and volunteer and promote your certification, this is our ultimate tool for greater awareness. Please do engage with your association. You are an army of 25,000 ambassadors for the profession and the certification programs, and you need to be recognized and appreciated for your important work. I am passionate about this association and committed to ensuring that you, our members, get the recognition you deserve. Before we officially start the virtual conference with our interactive panel session on emerging markets, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors who have made this conference possible. OSETT values your continued support. We understand that change is in the air, and as such, we must look into new avenues of growth and deal with any headwinds that may affect our profession. Our interactive panel session, starting shortly, will discuss some of these issues. We hope you will attend, as the panelists will be exploring the future of the profession through the lens of OACETT's Emerging Markets Committee. Welcome once again to our virtual conference, and I hope you will find it as informative as I will. I would now like to invite Jennifer Hazelton, C.Tech, and the AIDO Counselor for the Central Region to open the interactive panel session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the interactive panel session on emerging markets. I will be the moderator on today's panel session. I cannot begin to underline how important this committee is in addressing the possible challenges and opportunities emerging markets provide. We need to ensure certification remains up to date in our fast-paced economy. To start this interactive panel session, I would like to invite OACETT's President-elect Micheal Mooney, C.E.T, AScT, to provide an overview of the Emerging Markets Committee and provide some historical context.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everybody for attending today. Our first section of the emerging markets really was brought about by you, the members. We were asked to look at different certifications, different qualifications, and as part of that, during our time here on AIDO, we've really developed a framework for how that process will work, and that's become the Emerging Markets Committee. As part of this, you may remember at our AGM last year that I did provide a brief overview of the same process that we established, and for everybody's benefit for the discussion today, I'm going to provide a brief overview of that process again. So if we can start with the first slide, we can start into it. So the first element that we've established with the Emerging Markets Committee is a tool to identify the trends, technologies, as well as anything else out there in the market that may impact our members or our certifications. So the key part to this really was finding a way to determine what the future of this looks like and finding a fast way to identify it. And we've listed off several things that the committee does with regards to regular market scans, government relations, assessing regulations, engaging young professionals, industry partnerships, liaisons with colleges. But a lot of this also depends on the work of our members. We want to engage in the socioeconomics as well as our members' roles that they play in their businesses. So really the ability to have this committee engage on so many different levels with industry, with government, with colleges, as well as with our members is going to be key to really identifying the trends that we need to take a look at. When we move on from the identification phase and we start talking about what we do next, we really need to have a framework in place that allows us to assess what we find coming in and talks to what level of response is warranted for it. So is this a trend that's 10 years from impacting us, or is this something that is going to impact us in a year or two? So if we could move to the next slide, please. We get into the assessment. The assessment process really is about taking everything that's been kind of identified in the initial stages and really looking at both the risks and opportunities. And it's based on our members and subject matter experts. So we want people that know something about the particular item that is before the committee, but we also want to hear from the members that are going to participate in this subcommittee to really understand how they feel it's going to impact their work. And that helps us assess whether or not we need to make adjustments to continue to support our members. As an example, is our certification need adjustments to stay in alignment with industry? Do we need to look at partnering credentials with industry based on the trends that we're seeing? Micro-credentialing, we're going to talk about later on today as well. There's a lot of trends in this area, and how does that actually impact both our members, students in colleges coming into the professions for the first time, and Also practice, how does it affect our professional practice? And then obviously you're all aware we're categorized in the disciplines, so we do need to look at whether or not any of these changes warrant modifications to the discipline. So our current certifications may be okay, but they may need to be, we may need a new discipline to assess somebody's qualifications differently than we have had to in the past, to make sure that we really are understanding who is coming into the profession and the jobs that they're doing in relation to our credentials to keep them relevant. We go from here, once we've kind of assessed the risks and opportunities, and we move into how do we develop change around this. If we can go to the next slide, we start talking about the pathways forward for a response. And so risk doesn't have to be negative, it can be positive. By virtue of not doing anything, we could be managing a risk as well. So this develop process is really about looking at what is the best pathway to respond to the opportunities and risks that have moved forward from that assessment phase. And really, there's a few pathways that are kind of core. There are some others depending on what exactly is coming forward. But as you can see, there's the potential for a new discipline. We will be looking at micro-credentialing. Certification updates may be required to keep alignment with industry. There may need to be the opportunity to look at a new designation altogether. Does C.E.T and C.Tech represent adequate recognition for certifications for everything that's happening, and can it fit on there? We really have to look at that pathway anytime something new comes up. And then we also have this idea of alternative pathways, and these alternative pathways really are about finding out how things are evolving in industry and in education and work experience to make sure that we're not excluding qualified people from being able to hold our certifications. We move on as well, and we look at what we have kind of in the pipeline right now to give you an example of what we've looked at in the development. So Code of Ethics update and professional practice update, which Barry later on will be talking to. Technical Stewardship program regarding kind of our ethics and ethos piece. And Cam will be talking about municipal infrastructure designation as part of the panel coming up as well. So those are currently under development, and we're going to explore those more coming up in the discussion today. If I can move on to the next slide. Once we've developed the pathway forward, really we're looking at the best way to implement the project. And so this could be via a task force, it could be via a subcommittee, it could be staff-led. It really is going to depend on the initiative of how we construct it. But to give you some ideas, what we have underway is industry partnerships with Mars Innovation District and Engineering Change Lab. And this is really around some of the pieces we're going to talk about later on. And what we did complete in this implementation phase is the establishment of a continual response process. So that is what we're talking about today, is that process that was. So the initial work of the Emerging Markets Committee was to figure out how to even do this within Oset so that we're able to respond quickly and adapt to what we're seeing. So the process that we're outlaying was actually the first task that was completed. And as mentioned before, this was an update that was provided at our last AGM to the memberships. And with our new leadership coming in with Chris and Barry, they're really taking the reins in terms of moving this forward and continuing the process each year. Next slide. So a quick overview of the emerging market subcommittees is we've established a municipal infrastructure, ethos and ethics, micro-credentials, and emerging technologies. And so these subcommittees represent what we're going to be discussing today as part of the panel discussion as well. And I'm really looking forward to you all hearing about the work that is happening under these categories. The main goal here is that these subcommittees are not necessarily static, in the sense that when we identify something, it may require the creation of a new subcommittee. And once work is finished, some of these subcommittees may no longer be required. So the process really is designed to evolve and be flexible and adaptive to what is actually needed. And that means the pitch for participation is that this Emerging Markets Committee also needs all of your help. So it needs members to participate along with your elected representatives. And I'm sure Chris and Barry will be happy to talk about that more later on. With that, I think that really wraps up kind of the overview of what the processes are. A little bit on the historical context before we move forward is really about looking at lessons that we've learned in the past in terms of our ability to respond, and trying to look forward to plan ahead so that we're not reacting to trends. Instead, we're being proactive in responding to and addressing the concerns and needs of our members as they evolve. So this really is about us kind of upping the game in terms of the work that we do to make sure you all, our members, are well represented, and that our credentials remain to be well placed within industry and recognized as some of the best credentials in the marketplace. With that, I would like to hand the floor back over to the moderator, Jennifer Hazelton, and I look forward to the ongoing discussion.
Thank you, Michael, for the detailed overview of the Emerging Markets Committee. Our members need to get this insight before we delve into more detail. We will now move on to discussing the subcommittees. Joining Michael will be a few more panelists. I am very happy to introduce Cam Johnston, C.E.T, RCCA Municipal Infrastructure Subcommittee Lead, Barry Billing, Director of AIDO, OACETT Registrar, and Ethos, Ethics and Ethos Subcommittee Staff Lead, Christopher Van Dop, C.E.T, VP of AIDO, Microcredentials Subcommittee Process Champion, and Ranjan Bhattacharya, Dean of Faculty and Applied Science and Engineering Technology, Seneca College. Before we begin, I would like to lay out the ground rules of this panel discussion. Each speaker will provide details on their particular subcommittee and will then be asked a series of questions. I invite all panelists to chime in if they would like to add any additional details. After responding, please mute your line again. I have to remind all panelists to be mindful of the time. Following the panel discussion, we will open the floor to members' questions. We will try to get to as many questions as possible in the allotted time. Any questions that we are unable to answer will be followed up by staff. We will begin this afternoon's interactive panel discussion with Cam Johnston, who will be discussing the main initiative of the Municipal Infrastructure Subcommittee.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, Jennifer and Michael and everybody else who's taken the time to organize this event. And of course, thank you for the individuals that are attending. Great event. I'm very pleased to be here. I'll take the next few minutes and run through some slides that'll give you the overview of this great initiative, the Municipal Infrastructure Initiative, near and dear to my heart, as I'm been involved many years with contract administration and inspection on municipal projects. So to start off, this idea, to give it some framework, really, was a series of discussions between many different members, many different consultants, many different agencies, and sort of modeled, as you see here, modeled after the Ministry of Transportation contract administration and inspection program. And we felt with all of the different different investments in infrastructure, and some of them many of you work at these locations. $1.2 billion for the City of Toronto infrastructure investment, $20 billion for the province of Ontario over the next 10 years. My home region appeal, $500 million over the next few years for infrastructure and investment. So, taking a look at all of this, looking to develop a specific municipal infrastructure and contract administration program, that were some of the ideas that got us to this point. And how could we, as the OSETT members, really benefit from engaging, new technology, engaging new designations, and moving our association into these areas. Next slide, please. So what we did was, we originally, when we started into the idea, we wanted to ground the idea into some foundational items, really understand the history and understand what municipalities were looking for, what was the gap between what OSETT members could supply and what was needed for inspection, contract administration, and really look at a general certification process. So what we did was, we had a couple different consultants do some small studies for us, looking at the markets that were available, looking at how we could fit in with any other existing programs or even practices that are out there, and really look at focusing in on certification for these type of individuals. Next slide, please. So as you see, some of the factors that I just mentioned, we took a look at what's the political environment, what's the investment in infrastructure. I mean, even the ones I mentioned, you could even look south of the border. They're talking about their $1 trillion infrastructure program. So there obviously is a focus on that. And again, that was the whole concept of how do we as an association, how do we benefit from that, for our members to be able to, move into that area. You'll also notice that part of the studies, we found that the current program that we run with the Ministry of Transportation, 14% of the members are actually municipal members. So we're looking at that as sort of, again, a base to get started. And then we expect, with all of the infrastructure spending, as I mentioned, and the ability to specifically train these individuals to focus on municipal infrastructure, we can capture and add quality and our abilities to these types of projects. Next slide, please. So again, looking at what we've done, we've taken that information and we've met with stakeholders, the consultants, as I mentioned, that they took the studies. We looked at ability to have a specific designation for that, and we're going to take that and look at opportunities to work with municipalities and or consultant firms to carry through as we move into the implementation of this project. As I mentioned, we're going to try to take advantage and focus on government spending programs, and of course the ultimate idea is to broaden the reach into this market. Next slide, please. So as part of what we've done to this point, again, as mentioned, we're going to model the road construction certification, take the concept of a municipal, or in their case, they have or in that case, it's a contract administration program and recertification every 3 years. We're going to take that and really sort of have the same idea with the municipal infrastructure designation, where we'll have a renewal period. We'll have on the municipal side, we're hoping to have 2 designations, which would be a contract administrator and an inspector. On the on the ministry, on the road construction side, we actually have 3, so we're looking at reducing that. And again, focusing in on the needs of municipalities. So we'll look at all of the different features that are coming in and the pressures that are coming into municipalities from new regulations, from existing regulations. For instance, those of you who may may or may not know the requirements of the Safe Water Drinking Act, dealing with water main construction and installation and commissioning, very high level of activity by water operators. How can we have inspectors? How can we have contract administrators, tie into that? Recently, we had the Construction Act that came into effect. How do contract administrators and inspectors deal with that? And again, most recent is excess soils regulation. Again, how can this designation individuals get trained up to be able to deal with that? Next slide, please. So as we've moved through the project idea phase, into initiation, into the project plan, we're starting to look at, getting closer to implementation. We've defined the project plan. As I mentioned, we've done a work breakdown structure of all of the different, deliverables and activities and tasks that we have to do. We've spent a lot of time developing and assessing the academic and experience requirements, and we're almost there with that. There is a draft available, and that will be going out to various stakeholders to take a look at that to see if we align with what's needed and what the intent of this designation is. We're hoping to partner with the municipality or region. So I welcome anybody that's out there that wants to get involved to definitely, give us a call, and we can look at partnering on this designation and moving forward with it. We have to work through finalizing educational vendors and finalize the recertification timeframes associated with this new designation. And that, folks, I think wraps up a little bit of an overview of where we're at with this new designation. Very, very exciting. I know the team has been tremendously helpful and great support from the OSETT. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jennifer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cam. First off, what concerns are there among municipal officials about the quality of projects and availability of qualified persons to do the work?
Well, I think what we see, and I can again speak from our perspective at the region of Peel, and also what we've heard from other members of the team and that sort of thing. I think the biggest issue is the consistency with the application of the standards and specifications, and really documentation associated with carrying through on a contract administration and inspection project. For those of you who are involved in the ministry's contract administration program and been through that training, it's very clear that through that training they spend many hours and are very disciplined at making sure documentation is clear and concise and hits all the marks along the way for those projects. So what we're looking at is sort of bringing it down to the next level. Municipalities, which are very fragmented. Some municipalities have very good processes and practice. Other municipalities that we found, and they tend to be the smaller ones, don't have those, don't have the rigor associated with that. So that's what we're hoping to achieve in this. So thank you.
How would this program help with training, do you think?
Well, what we look at is, and we've kind of investigated there, and I mentioned a little bit in the presentation, there will be, a continual review of whether it could be updated legislation or regulations or practices or technology associated with, again, it could be a field, the field inspection application, or who knows what it might be. But definitely having this consistent approach, having the individuals go through a series of certification and ongoing activities, it would definitely allow for consistency, in both in the delivery of the product and in training aspect of things.
Given the current political climate, are there any concerns?
I don't see that. I think that one of the biggest challenges we've talked about is the ability to be able to, reach out to all the various municipalities with this type of with these type of individuals and this sort of program available. And I don't think it really crosses the political boundary. I think it would actually be a good thing from a politician's perspective to be able to say, hey, you know what, as we invest in infrastructure, we have these qualified individuals that would allow us to get the best value for the dollar while investing in the infrastructure.
Thank you. Just one last question. Can you
Sure.
provide a little more information on the 2 levels of designation for road construction?
Okay, so for this initiative, the municipal infrastructure, there would be a designation for a contract administrator, which of course, typically on a project, contract administrator would have the lead responsibilities to administer the contract, whether it is sort of a smaller $1 million infrastructure or water main replacement or something like that. That would be the contract administrator. And then we'd also look at an inspection designation, which generally would be somebody that would be moving into the business, so to speak. In other words, as somebody's maybe a 3-year graduate, they would look at layering on top of their sort of ultimate C.E.T. designation. They would have an ability to be able to have a municipal infrastructure designation at the inspection level. And what we ultimately would like to see, and again, this is where it becomes a little bit of a challenge, is that the municipalities would write in when they issue an RFP for consultant services, or even when they're hiring individuals, they would look at having an individual that has this multiple designation. So for instance, could be a C.E.T. plus a municipal contractor administration designation, and have that written into their RFPs, or also written into their the requirements for that for hiring staff or whatever the case may be. So that's ultimately down the road what we'd like to see. It's being done now for the ministry as part of the road construction work.
Thank you, Cam. Would anyone else like to chime in from the panel? Okay, thank you very much, Cam.
All right, thank you.
I now ask Barry Billen to provide an overview of the Ethics and Ethos Subcommittee.
Thank you, Jennifer. An area of the Emerging Markets Committee that is being explored is the need to continue to provide robust ethical guidelines and principles to our membership as change occurs. A strength of OSETT is the establishment of a code of ethics and a strong commitment to ethics for members. Being a certified member sets you apart from others as you have a code that you abide by, and as more ethical questions arise within your profession, we will continue to work on ensuring guidance is in place. Next slide.
Barry, do ethics address current challenges facing our members due to technological advancement and/or market disruptions?
Yes, Jennifer. So before I answer that question, I would like to briefly define what is ethics and a code of ethics. So ethics are the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Whereas a code of ethics is actually the guide of principles designed to help professionals conduct business honestly and with integrity, including systemization, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior. So all of our members adhere to a code of ethics, and it has served well over the years, but with rapid change occurring in how society interacts and technological advancements, it's now a good time to review and add items that are not currently addressed. Next slide, please. So the current code of ethics that we have focuses on professional ethics and professional conduct. The committee is reviewing the code of ethics to address other issues related to items such as social media or disruptive technologies, etc., that fall probably outside our professional conduct, but need to be considered. And so through some of the exploratory work, it is now becoming very clear to the committee that the concept of ethics in technology, also known as techno ethics, needs to be examined within what we do and how we operate. Next slide. So what techno ethics does is it views technology and ethics in a way that they are socially embedded in enterprises and focuses on discovering the ethical uses for technology, protecting them against the misuse of technology, and devising common principles to guide new advances in technological development and application to benefit society. So two of the basic subdivisions out of this area is how ethics are involved in developing new technology. So in essence, whether right or wrong to invent and implement a technical innovation. So an example of this could be, what are the ethical questions surrounding the production of new manufacturing processes that might inhibit employment? So those are considerations that need to be thought of when making changes. Secondly, the ethical questions in which technology extends or curtails the power of individuals. How is standard ethical questions are changed by the new powers? What is also known in this case, and as an example, would be around privacy and free speech. They have now been given new shape and urgency in an internet age where we easily give our information to areas such as Facebook or through Google or Amazon. And how is that data actually being used and who is looking after it? Next slide. So we've touched on a little bit about ethics. Now let's talk about ethos. So ethos, again, is the expression or character or consciences, which in turn has been shaped by action. So where the code of ethics is based on practice-based text, ethos addresses behavior and principles. And so it is here that the committee starts to see that we need to be more aware of ethics in technology and how engineering technicians and technologists shape social responsibilities, ethics, resiliency, and sustainability. Next. So the engineering community has actually already started work on promoting ethos with the creation of principle-based declarations around the use of artificial intelligence and other powerful and potentially disruptive technology. Two of the more recognized ones are Tech for Good, as well as technological stewardship. And as mentioned previously by Micheal Mooney, today I'd like to discuss further the principles of technological stewardship, as the committee has been viewing this as being most beneficial to current members and future members. Technological stewardship was originally put forward by the Engineering Change Lab, a national initiative launched in collaboration with Engineers Canada, Engineers Without Borders, and other university, private, and public sector partners. So what is tech stewardship? Well, again, it's a professional identity, orientation, and practice where tech stewards continuously discuss, refine, and imagine new ways to shape technology for the benefit of all. So they review that tech is not neutral. Stewards imagine, design, and implement technology intentionally for positive impact. The pace of the tech disruption is accelerating. We're all aware of this, and they anticipate, monitor, and manage and complex the impacts of technology, as well as they actually ask the big question of who's driving tech. Then they will expand who and what is considered and involved in decision-making. Its aim is to expand the conversation beyond just having engineers involved in technological change, but to be more aware of the need for the involvement of others and be conscious of how decisions made now affect the future. So again, they look to proceed in a manner that cares for the environment, economy, communities, and individuals, while ensuring that technology is used to create a better world for all. It calls for those who create and influence technology to adopt a more responsible leadership role, arguing for an expansion in how engineers and others should see their contributions. And finally, it implements technological stewardship principles that describe clear yardsticks for action, structures, decisions, and results. Next slide. So these are the principles for the engineering community based on technological stewardship. So items of this nature are seeking purpose, taking responsibility, expanding involvement, widening approaches. And the use of these principles expands the conversation to allow for meaningful questions to be asked, including such items as, are we thinking beyond can we do this to also include should we do this? What about what we will do in the case of a serious unintended impact based on our engineering? And what experts beyond engineering are we actually working with? Should there be anybody else we should consult around ways to address the problem? As well as possibly, are we doing what we need to do to ensure that information facilitates meaningful engagement? So the important part about putting principles into practice. And so if we can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Taking those principles and putting them into practice is the important part. And this is what's being created by the Engineering Change Lab to do such things. So what the Engineering Change Lab currently is looking into, and we are also investigating in exploratory work, is the fact that they have put together a combined microplacement and work integrated learning reflective practice program to better prepare students for the world of work and supporting leading employers to lean into the future of engineering. From that, they're actually looking at the following outcomes. They want to advance tech stewardship understanding, deliberate values, and practice tech stewardship behaviors. So this program is just starting out, but it is supported by the Tech Stewardship Network, Engineering Change Lab, Mars Discovery District, Business and Higher Education Roundtable, plus 8 post-secondary institutions. So this is where the subcommittee has been looking to see where we can assist and help. So in summary, the presentation I've provided, although in rapid order, the Ethics and Ethos Committee is looking to expand the Code of Ethics beyond what it is current to emphasize ethical behavior in how we operate. As part of the review, principle-based declarations in engineering technology has become part of its focus, with the concept of engineering stewardship being of most interest to pursue in order to express what we value, while also being agile in the face of profound change. And that concludes.
Thank you, Barry. That was very informative. One question, do you feel disruptive technologies have changed how we look at ethics in the profession?
Yes, very much so. So it's my feeling that disruptive technology, which is an innovation that significantly alters the way that consumers, industries, or businesses operate, it's a technology that actually sweeps away systems or habits that replace it because it has attributes that are recognizably superior. So disruptive technology, by its very nature, it keeps moving the understanding of what is right and what is wrong as progress occurs. But at the same time, it's actually caused interest with ethical thinking amongst the engineering community to also consider, just because we can create something, should we create it if it could do harm in the future?
Thank you, Barry. I would now like to ask the panel members to provide their feedback, should they have any. Michael?
Thanks, Jennifer. And thanks, Barry, for that in-depth overview. I think the interesting piece that I would like to add to this is that while the committee works on its application with respect to OSETT, the ethics, ethos, and tech stewardship represents a change in thinking in the engineering community as a whole that we have not seen before in the past, where they're really talking not just about themselves, but they're expanding and trying to have the understanding of how this is applicable in engineering adjacent industries as well. So this also represents as a bit of an opportunity in my mind for our members to really establish themselves as not only the thought leaders in how we bring these disruptive technologies to practice through our ethics and ethos, but also as the people that can actually create some of the reflections and principles that will help shape and guide how the broader community reflects on this. So I really appreciate, Barry, that you brought this forward in this manner as well. Thank you.
Ranjan, you had a question or a comment?
Thanks, Jennifer, and my also thanks to Barry for doing a great job on talking about quite a complex but yet so important of a topic, and it's something that in the post-secondary role that we do often deliberate over and sometimes struggle with in terms of how do we embed that right from the get-go with our students. And I like the fact that we can work with a framework and that becomes a practice. So it is something that is at the forefront of all the programs that we develop, that we deliver, that we update, and it is something that we constantly get feedback from a lot of our employer partners on. So it speaks to the larger topic of soft skills, but I would happen to think that ethics probably is the most fundamental soft skill. And if you tie back to the presentation Cam did on the municipal infrastructure, so if you have great technical skills, but you don't have the ethics behind it, that could lead to some definite negative impacts to the public good. So it's great. It's great to see Barry provide that feedback. It is timely and I'm going to say very urgent as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Just to ensure that we keep moving on time, I'm going to move on to the topic of micro-credentials. I'm now going to ask Christopher Van Dop to discuss what I know is going to be a very hot topic, micro-credentials.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being part of this emerging market panel. Micro-credential is a general term that we can use to identify an individual's ongoing competency improvements in our ever-changing world. They allow skills and competencies to be learned and identified in a flexible, fast, and affordable way. Micro-credentials are designed to help organizations recognize and integrate critical skill sets into their workforce while supporting the pursuit of individual career goals in a stackable, portable, and customizable way. Micro-credentials are being defined and created by education institutes, as well as specific employers and industries.
Thank you, Christopher. Please tell me what are some of the opportunities for OACETT concerning micro-credentialing?
Micro-credentialing will allow IEDO to recognize measurable advances of member competencies leading to acceptable CPD, as well as potential designation expansion. It's a long description.
Given those opportunities for OSET, do you feel that micro-credentials are the future? And how do we augment those with our OSET certifications?
Our time at college taught us how to understand and apply the latest technology that was available at that time. We are all aware that technological knowledge in our world expands or changes every day, if not every hour. It is our responsibility as professional certified technicians and technologists to ensure that our knowledge and competencies are continuously updated. What we call at OSETT continuous professional development. Some of us also recognize that our professional career interests change and may intersect with or transfer completely to disciplines other than that specified by our original core discipline. The introduction of micro-credentials within IETO will allow OSETT members to express and industry to recognize specific competencies over and above the core discipline defined within our certification. The Emerging Market Committee is tracking and evaluating provincial and federal trends in micro-credentialing to ensure that OSETT members will have the best data that will allow us and them to align reviews of our various certification programs to ensure that we meet industry needs, as well as a mechanism to express member competencies within our system of designations. In conclusion, I believe that the micro-credentials will have a very positive impact on our future. We will be helping our members to upgrade appropriate skills in manageable pieces and have a system to track and display those same changes. The ability to expand and market professionalism within the technology industry will increase the value of OSETT and therefore all our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. I would now like to hear from Ranjan. Is there a chance for OSETT and the colleges to collaborate on micro-credentialing?
Great question, Jennifer, and thank you for it. And if I could just talk about micro-credentials maybe in a larger sense first, in terms of how they're created, how they're identified, and then we can talk about, the short answer is yes, but in terms of how we can come to that. In terms of micro-credentials, what I would have to say is, for a few things to be considered, is what is the value proposition that they afford? So I think one thing micro-credentials do is they actually recognize the diversity in the audience that is taken. That when I say diversity, it could be different places in their lives, different places in terms of academic achievement. And so the micro-credential from its very nature is a very specific skill that can be earned without having perhaps not an entire degree or a diploma behind you. It's a very timely, industry endorsed, that's the other principle. It's an industry endorsed, industry required credential, and usually there's a sense of urgency around it. In terms of its structure, so we call them, a term that we use is stackability. So these credentials have the potential to be stackable in how we form them. So that could be both a vertical stack, whereby a skill is learned very deeply in incremental amounts, or it can be a horizontal stack where it is learned, it can be achieved more broadly, or a different set of skills can be learned over the course of time. So it's important to remember that we can stack them, so it leaves its flexibility. Related to flexibility, it has to be accessible. So the delivery modalities, how can it, so it has to be designed so it can be delivered in multiple ways. And the other, I think another big fundamental piece of it is around the quality assurance piece of it. So when we design micro-credentials at Seneca, it needs to meet a certain quality framework in terms of its design, in terms of its structure, in terms of how it's evaluated, in terms of how the credential is qualified and then distributed. And also that, so we have, for example, being able to provide these micro-credentials in a secure digital format so they can be used for those folks that have taken them across a number of different areas. So someone mentioned continuous professional development, and I think the answer would be that micro-credentials would be an ideal tool to use for this continuous professional development, because they can be accessed quickly, they can be compiled quickly, delivered quickly, mounted quickly. So they are quite positive. So the long answer to a really short question, Jennifer, is yes. The colleges do have the framework in place. We've started developing micro-credentials and delivering them, so we have the ability to deliver them as well. So I think it aligns really well with OSETT's desire for making sure that the membership stays relevant and current in their technical, and I'm going to say the other areas as well, because it's not just technical skills that these micro-credentials can be used. It could be used in development, some, let's say, these ethics courses, et cetera. So I think it's a great opportunity for OSETT and the colleges to work together.
Thank you, Ranjan and Christopher. It's very interesting to hear. Any thoughts from any of the other panel members? Micheal Mooney.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher and Ranjan, on kind of exploring that. I guess a bit of a discussion piece that I have around this too is we're seeing non-academic institutions starting to wade into micro-credentialing. And I think from OSETT's perspective is we need to figure out how we address that piece of it too, right? So it's not just about what we create in partnership with the colleges, but it's what others are creating in industries. So, I mean, I don't want to pose a question back to the other panelists, but I think that's an important trend that we've seen happening that OSETT really needs to also include in kind of its reflection and understanding of kind of how micro-credentialings are starting to develop in industry. Thank you.
Okay, actually now it's time for our final panelist. Micheal, could you please tell me more about the current opportunities with emerging markets?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the idea of the emerging markets really is kind of the broader reflection of everything everybody's been talking about here. So Barry, Chris, Ranjan, everybody's kind of done a deep dive into areas that we initially identified as part of the first round of kind of emerging technologies. And I refer to it originally as emerging technologies and markets, because sometimes it's not the tech, it's how the industry and market's growing and emerging that we want to look at. But I think really the idea behind it is to really have this, to be in tune with academic institutions, industry, and our members to the point that we're able to identify the opportunities that are coming up. So some of them that have come up over the course of COVID have been packaging technology, cannabis industry, renewable energy, the sector is growing, sustainable resources, additive and advanced manufacturing, the Internet of Things, new materials being used in different ways, such as woods and other complex composites. And we're seeing a lot of different trends kind of happening all over the place. Some are driven by academic research. Some are driven by new technologies being used in ways, as Barry mentioned, we haven't previously considered, and it shifts our understanding of ethics. So I think there's a lot here. Like, there's an immense amount of trends, and we don't want to be responding to everything, especially if it doesn't impact us. So really, the opportunities that present us are really trying to hone in on the things that do impact our members, and we can build, we need to address to support our members in their practice, but it also things that will help our members distinguish themselves as the experts they are in industry. You saw the Premier talk about how important our technicians and technologists are to the economy and recovery in Ontario. And that is going to be dependent on a lot of these things that we see coming out of it, even from the regulation side of things. As Cam was saying, we need skills and certifications that reflect that. So I think what I'll do is I'll leave it. I'll leave room for some questions around this, because I think from an emerging technology standpoint, this is huge. And I've provided a short list, but it's really the process of how we identify these things and then how we follow through with it, as everybody else has said. That's really the important piece, or the starting point for all of this. So, I mean, the great work that Chris, Barry, Ranjan, our committee members, and others are doing in these areas, these are all huge opportunities for us in the emerging markets technology. So thank you.
Just one question, because I have seen several questions coming in the chat box, but why are emerging market subcommittees necessary to OSETT?
So the emerging markets subcommittees really are about bringing together our members and subject matter experts to deal with particular items. So in the past, we have always tried to kind of be flexible and adapt to industry. Sometimes we've been more responsive than others. And so really the subcommittee's approach was a way of pulling together people that are willing to put in both the expertise and the effort to make sure that OSETT is able to respond and to identify to the opportunities that are coming forth. So it's really a tool for us to structure a continual improvement process, for lack of a better term, that really ensures that there's some accountability in moving, and champions that move each of these things forward before we get to the point where we're asking for funding or other resources to be committed to further development.
Thank you, Michael. I would now ask the panel if to provide any further feedback. Barry?
Thank you, Jennifer. I just wanted to make mention, because I didn't earlier, and Michael just touched on it, that while looking at emerging technologies, we have a lot of areas to look into, and we sort of focused it into 4 different subcategories. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to mention that we're always looking for additional volunteers to help us out on these committees, bringing your skill set and your knowledge and what's happening in your profession forward, so that, again, the committee itself is aware of items that we should be recognizing and working towards. So I just wanted to take this brief opportunity before we open it up for questions to indicate that we continuously look for volunteers to help us in all the various subcommittees. To, you know, many hands make light work, and there's a lot to do in this committee, as you can see, that we're taking on. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, I will now read out some of the questions from the audience and direct the questions to the appropriate panelists. I do ask the other panelists, please weigh in if I haven't picked the appropriate person. How is OACETT looking at the nuclear industry and the future of the SMRs in this provincial throughout? And I can't read the rest of the question, I do apologize. Throughout Canada. Michael?
So I just want to, in the historical context, is SMRs, so small modular reactors for the nuclear energy, has been an important energy trend that has been happening in industry. We haven't, from up until now, I don't think it's been specifically identified, but as we outlined today, the intent of the process that we're starting off again here today is for Chris and his team to be able to do market scans to identify those trends such as SMRs and look at how OSET would be. I don't know, Barry or Chris, if you have anything you would want to add to that. Sorry, Jennifer.
No, I was just going to say this is exactly what I was talking about, that, you know, we're looking for our membership to bring forward these type of things for us to look into and be aware of.
And Christopher, you had your hand up?
Yes, and I agree with Barry and Michael in that we're always looking for people who are working in emerging technologies or what they feel is emerging technologies. And we're always looking for information on how you think it is going to be emerging, or why you think it's an important technology. And obviously, if you do have information, perhaps you'd like to put on a CPD event and talk about it so that more people can understand where you're coming from, and we can decide whether there is a great, or how much the interest is. You may get a lot more people interested in your renewable market if you can spread the information out. There are a lot of things that I would love to get more involved in if I knew it gets more background information. So if you could volunteer to put on an information seminar or something of this nature, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
We did receive a question from Peter with regards to, is there interaction with the PEO? Michael, would you be able, oh, Cam, would you be able to answer this one? Oh, Cam, you're still muted.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for the question. I could speak to the initiative that I've been working on. And we did have a presentation with actually the consulting engineers of Ontario, not the professional engineers of Ontario, but the consulting engineers of Ontario on an initiative that we were working on. And I think, as sort of just was mentioned, you know, as ideas come forth and come to this committee, there is a framework in place and a sort of an organic approach to moving things through the industry. So I would not, from our perspective, I don't want to speak for the other members of the panel, but I would not see that would be sort of a restriction at all to be able to work hand in hand with them. I know on our initiative, we did have some interaction with the consulting engineers of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. Michael?
Thank you, Jennifer. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, there is interaction with PEO as well as other industry bodies and regulators from a leadership level within OSETT. And this, again, is designed to support the efforts of IEDO and the various committees and boards that need to further the cause for our members. So it's not, the engagements are going to be around new and emerging trends. Ethics and Ethos is one example where we are working as part of a group that PEO is involved with as well, as an example. But also in terms of even our current certifications and status. So I think the short answer is yes, there is engagement with PEO as well as any other industry and regulatory bodies that are I don't want to say entangled, it's not the right word, but are either kind of sister or within kind of the scope of what our members do, as well as potentially maybe impacted by what we're proposing to do.
Thank you. A question from Ernie: is on-the-job training concerned with micro-credentials? Christopher, would you be able to respond to that one?
On-the-job training is a very general term. It might very well be part of a micro-credential. That's where I'm sure Ranjan can speak to this as well. The definition of an actual micro-credential is still being developed. So there's no guarantee that it will or will not. I'm sorry at this time. We're still investigating this whole process. But certainly that kind of thing may very well be a micro-credential that your company and or industry may recognize, and certainly that if they do that, OSETT will look at that as to see whether we will recognize it as same. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. We just received a question from Dennis. Christopher and or Michael, please expand on the relationship between emerging technologies and certifications, disciplines, and micro-credentials subcommittees as we move forward with the understanding and development representing certified members in the industries.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Absolutely. Please explain, no problem. Please expand on the relationships between emerging technologies and certifications, disciplines, and micro-credentials subcommittees as we move forward with the understanding and development representing certified members in the industries.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. We are all when we are certified, we have a core discipline, absolutely, and we may or may not continue with that. One of the purposes of the committee is to look at industry to see whether a particular designation is acceptable within our the auspices of OSETT, and to see whether we can make it work within our designations or our system. So certainly we're looking at for instance, the applied science technologist designation, is that still valuable? I know at this moment, we are not giving it out, but absolutely, if we will be looking at industry to see whether that has a market, and we'll see whether that is a valuable thing to bring back.
Thank you, Christopher. Barry?
Yes, so that question was like intertwined, and that's exactly what we're looking at with emerging technologies. I think it touched on it, is that yes, we currently have 15 disciplines that we certify, but that's not to say we need to have 15 in the future. Like, we're looking at potential opportunities and areas of expansion. And this is where sort of what Ranjan was talking about, micro-credentialing, the ability to, provide skills and have employers recognize some of the work you're doing, those are the things that we're looking into. So that may affect, disciplines in the future. Maybe we have megatronics or items of that nature as different disciplines get combined. That's exactly what we're looking at as the emerging markets, is trying to understand all these interconnecting issues that are occurring right now within the engineering technology community, and trying to make sense of them and provide a good solution for our OSETT members.
Thank you, Barry and Christopher. We just received a question from Peter. Micro-credentials may include site-specific safety training. I don't know if the detail has gotten into the micro-credentials yet or not, but that has been a question.
So things along the line of safety training, we recognize more as a continuing professional development as part of your current profession and what you do. Micro-credentialing is really a short burst of learning, either, as Ranjan alluded to, could be soft skills, or it could be more specific skills that you need to do your job or advance your career. So that's where we're looking at micro-credentials, whereas health and safety items tend to fall under a continuing professional development response.
Thank you, Barry. Is there any other questions? We've gone through all the ones that have been in the chat so far. And do any of the members of the panel have anything else? We have about 5 more minutes left. Oh, Michael.
I want to pick on Ranjan a little bit, just because I think we have a great opportunity with the micro-credentialing discussion, just to kind of get the colleges, particularly Seneca's position on it. And I think, even to my comment earlier about how some industry is developing their own kind of credentials and kind of what the view on that is. So.
Or I guess that's my cue, Jennifer, to jump in, I guess. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, please.
No, and thanks, thanks, Michael, for bringing that up, because it is something that is, let's say, and not to pull a pun here, but it is something that is emergent. But it is something that is, once again, going back to accessibility. I really appreciate the questions regarding, is a micro-credential this, is a micro-credential that have been coming through, which tells that people are thinking about it. But I'd like to say that they're both. They're not necessarily exclusive of one another. So in the sense of doing, let's say, some site-specific training or organization-specific training, it can be considered a tool that can be used. Since if we were to go down the route of having a quality assurance framework set up, you could then, for lack of a better word, just assure that the individual has gone through the training, has completed an assessment, and it is now documented formally in a very flexible way. That's something that, and that may be something that it could be, from a health and safety perspective, could be something that could be transferable across different organizations. So you have the value for the company and you have the value for the individual. But I think and Mike is talking about emerging technologies, and it's something that from the colleges, it is something that's very exciting, but something that we also struggle with in terms of how do we embed that into our existing programs, or does it constitute enough to be a new program such that we can develop it? And as you can probably imagine, and a lot of times us being able to deliver a 3-year advanced diploma, which is great, but and I'm just looking at, for example, the Internet of Things, emerging technology that Michael referenced there. That is something that is changing almost daily. So is this, I would suggest a micro-credential in this case would be an appropriate learning tool or a learning vehicle or platform that could be utilized, because you could take the newest technology, the newest tools, and then provide the training that can be utilized almost immediately to be able to go back to a certain company and provide the workforce with the training that emergent training that they need. So the colleges are approaching it from that perspective. So all of the colleges, Seneca for one of them, we do have a very robust continuing education department area that could be well utilized. Once again, it is a collaboration between industry, between the academic areas and the delivery mechanism area as well. So it is I think it is something that that, for example, it is quite timely. And we are finding that we're getting a lot of interest in it from our industry partners for sure, because they love the colleges, they love the products that we put out. But a lot of times they're kind of like, I can't wait the 2 years to get this technology. I'm actually losing competitive advantage by not having our folks set up in that way. So it's something that could be used, I'm going to say, from a business perspective, but also from a let's say from a succession planning perspective, to ensure that your workforce is kept up to date and be viable for any new projects that come along. So I'll stop there, Jen, and I'll see if there's any questions I can try to answer.
Okay, there hasn't been any other questions, but actually that racks out time. So thank you very much, Ranjan. That was
Wonderful. So I don't have time to pick on Mike then.
I can make 2 minutes if you'd like.
I'll save
That
that
is
for
no
I'll save that
problem.
2 minutes for another time.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, thank you to all the panelists. Wonderful discussions today. It was a great start to our 3 days of great sessions. So please join us this evening at 6:30 for a continuing professional development webinar on strategic change management, brought to you by Corey Atkinson of CSPN. Be sure to log on a few minutes early and select the agenda item so you can tune in. Otherwise, have a great afternoon. Thank you again to all of our panelists. If any questions do come up, please feel free to contact the office and we will get back to you as soon as possible.